Hey, Cut the Shit listeners. You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Go check us out.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Cut the Shit, a podcast series that aims to take a closer look at the impact of the IT industry, both the good and the bad. Cut the Shit is brought to you by Plow Networks, a managed IT services company based just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Bryan Link, COO here at Plow, and I'll be your host for this series. I'll ask questions, and with the help of our guests, try to dig deep on some of the key challenges we all face dealing with IT. So with that, let's cut the shit and get started. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well out there in podcast land. With apologies to T Swift, it's just me today. So hi, it's me. I guess which also makes me the problem if this doesn't go well, since I'm by myself. But I'm optimistic that it's going to go well, so let's get going. I'm recording this on a Friday afternoon, and it's a beautiful day here. Mid-70s, not really any humidity. Fall is just about here in North Carolina. And with college football in full swing, plus Major League Baseball playoffs starting next week, for a guy like me, it truly is the most wonderful time of the year. And I love Christmas. So that's saying something. Before I get to my topics today, or my main topic, I've got two article recommendations for you, both from the Wall Street Journal, not a huge surprise, and both about cybersecurity, also not a huge surprise. I know you're probably like, awesome, just what I need, another bunch of articles telling me we're all screwed security-wise. That's not exactly what these are. I wouldn't necessarily call them sunny and optimistic either, but in fact, they're really interesting, and the reason I'm recommending them is because they present somewhat counterintuitive ideas for how to help employees be better at cyber hygiene. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. All right, let's get to it. For the main event today, we're going to talk a little bit about where we are in the calendar. So by the time this is released, which will be next Tuesday, October 3rd, the fourth quarter will have started. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking about what that means for us at Plow and what you might consider making it mean for the IT part of your company, whether you're in IT leadership or on the business side who either has to deal with IT or oversees it or something along those lines. So there's a couple of things that we're working on or we're thinking about as we head into the fourth quarter. Some of which are, I'd say, backwards looking, but for the most part, more forward looking than anything else. We're a small company, right? 40 people, so we don't have a big, capital budgeting or formal budgeting process. So that's not really the life that we live, and what we deal with as we think about preparing for next year. At the same time, we have to figure out how much money are we spending. And if we need to invest in anything, how are we going to do that? So at the end of the day, the questions are the same. The magnitude's quite a bit different, obviously. And the nature of the timeline for being able to try to put answers to those questions is different. So ours is really kind of compressed and simpler because we're smaller. So if you're in a larger business, you probably have a formal budgeting process. You're probably in the throes of that now. And therefore, if you're like I was back in the day when I went through this process, you might even be a little frustrated thinking, how the hell am I supposed to know what I need, 12 to 15 months from now when I barely know what I need 3 months from now or 6 months from now, especially in technology where things are changing. Particularly on the human resources side, you don't always necessarily know what you might need. So there are some real challenges to that model, but it's the reality that you live in if you're in a bigger place, so you just sort of have to deal with it. So for our purposes, we're really taking a close look at the people we have. Do we have the right people in the boat? Do we have enough people in the boat as we think about where we think we're going to be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter of next year? Again, the bulk of our business is recurring revenue, so it does have it has some fairly smooth aspects to it because we're providing recurring services for most of our clients over time, right? The same things month after month. Those also very easily stair step though. If we have either a new client who we bring on who's got, a significant amount of size or complexity and needs a lot of services, well, all of a sudden we might be strapped in terms of our human resources and the ability to deliver. So we have to deal with that challenge and try to anticipate that. Or an existing client who wants to take on a new service that could cause the exact same issue for us in another area where we weren't previously providing services for them. Maybe we were doing cloud services and not network, and now they'd like some help there. those are the kinds of scenarios that we're thinking about. And so my sense is you need to be thinking about the exact same thing on your side, particularly if you're on the technology side in a larger company, which is how do you understand what your business partners need? How can you understand as closely as possible what they're looking at in terms of growth, right? And so that might stress your ability to deliver internal services to them. Or are they looking at either new lines of business or changes in the way they deliver what they deliver today so that their actual needs would be different? Maybe it's not more of the same thing. Maybe it's something different. That's always something, that could create challenges for you if you can't anticipate it, because there's going to be some lead time on that. And then there's, are there any chances for operational efficiency? I mean, you might want to talk to them about where do they feel like they're inefficient? Where are they not getting the productivity that they think they should get? Maybe there's a technology solution or two that could help with that. Maybe not, but it's worth asking and talking about that. And then lastly, we just referenced it in the intro, but where are potential risks for your business partners? Where are they exposed? And, cybersecurity is sort of an obvious one. That might be something to think about. I'm not going to say might be. That is definitely something for you to think about. You need to always be thinking about it if you're helping your business partners with that. But there are lots of other kinds of risks out there that technology can potentially help with, right? Outside of cybersecurity, right? It could be operational risk, right? If maybe they've got key employees who deliver certain kinds of services, and if you don't have good technology systems around them, if something were to happen to those individuals, whether they be, something bad happens, they get injured or sick, or, they decide to leave. I mean, these things happen, right? You've got human resource risk, and you might be able to leverage technology to help with that. So that's one example of a non-cybersecurity risk that you should probably be thinking about in the context of your 2024 planning. And so we tend to think of 2024 planning as budgeting, and that's obviously that's a big part of it, right? The CFO's got to know how much money to spend. They've got to know if they've got to get investment requests and that sort of thing. But I think hand in hand with that is sort of a business/technology assessment. Where are we today? Where are we trying to go? And then looking at those elements of that. Are there growth? What's potential growth look like? Are there potential risks we need to be thinking about? Are there efficiencies that we might be able to help our business partners gain? All three of those, again, would trickle down or result in a budget discussion, perhaps, but they might also just be a reallocation or a rejiggering of the way you're delivering internal services today. So I think that sort of tech assessment plus budget work as you look towards 2024 is really critical. And I'm obviously not telling you anything you don't already know, because that process is most likely dictated by your company as far as the budget side. What I am saying is think about it more broadly than that and look at packaging up or making the tech assessment part of it really inherent to it, so that it's not just about dollars, it's about the technology assessment piece across those areas or those dimensions. And I think that'll help you, and I think it'll help your business partners too as you guys work through that relationship. Another thing that we're doing that I think makes a lot of sense for our clients for sure, and if you're not a client, for you as well, is take a look at the vendors that you currently have delivering services to you. Are you getting what you need? Are you getting what you think you should be getting from those relationships? And I think having those internal conversations and then having conversations with your vendors about that, this is a great time to do that, right? Everybody knows, there's nothing magic about January 1, but it's a great way to sort of restart the clock. And it's a great point in time to think about, okay, let's not we start something new, but we're taking a look, we're sort of resetting the dial. So it's a good time to take stock of those things like vendor relationships. Almost everybody's got technology vendors now. Very, very few companies are doing it all themselves. Some do more than others, and depending on your size, you've probably got a blend. If you're real small, you might not have anybody. You might not do anything internally, or you might just have one person who's sort of the technology guy or gal, and they got drafted into that probably because they are a little more tech savvy than maybe somebody else. But you're probably more dependent on external vendors. If you're larger, you probably have a blended model, right? You've got some internal resources doing certain things for you that might be business specific or application specific, maybe delivering some internal support around those applications because that sort of tacit knowledge or internal knowledge you've got makes it hard for external resources to do it. Also, external resources, dollar for dollar, are more expensive in the sense of if you need a full head for one thing and it's something that you can do, oftentimes it's going to be cheaper to do that internally than it would be to do it externally, at least on paper. This is no different than using a contractor as opposed to an internal employee. Now, it's important to keep in mind that there's cost and then there's the full cost of delivery, if you will, right? And so if you've got an employee, looking at the cost of an employee, let's say that employee costs $75,000 in annual salary plus benefits. So let's just put that at $90,000 all told. That's not actually the true cost of having an employee, right? That's the cost on paper. Just like a contractor might be $100,000 or $120,000 for that same role. And you might think, wow, that contractor is way more expensive. That's true, but there's a management overhead associated with managing employees internally that is difficult to assign cost to over and above salary and benefits. And you can't discount that. Now, you have to manage contractors as well. So in this case, it's kind of an even Steven. But in technology services, if you've got a good vendor relationship and there's a good understanding of what that vendor is supposed to do for you, it should reduce the management overhead related to getting that service delivered versus having an internal team do it. As an example, network management. If you've got a good network management partner, your management oversight for that should be very limited, right? You should not have to do much. In fact, if you are doing a lot, then you need to reassess that relationship because it's not working the way it should. It shouldn't be a big lift there. They should be able to really handle that almost exclusively, assuming they understand how the network is supposed to be scoped and how it's supposed to deliver services relative to your company. That's a good example of where thinking about the sort of the management drag associated with vendor management is an important characteristic for you to take into account as you're doing these vendor reviews. Also, where are they shoring you up? Where, if you think about the idea of bringing vendors to the table, in many ways, they should bring something to the table that you don't have internally and that is expensive and hard to get internally, some sort of expertise, right? That's the particular form of vendor relationship that we use. There's also, sort of a true outsourcing model where you go for a low-cost provider for services that are, very commoditized. We don't do that at Plow. You may use those kinds of resources at your company, and if you do, that's terrific. I don't have a lot to offer there because we don't use those kinds of resources and we don't provide those kinds of services. But that's another very viable way to use vendors. At the same time, you still should be looking closely at those relationships to make sure that they are delivering the cost savings that you think that they're supposed to, because that's what you went there for in the first place. So the fourth quarter is a great time to sharpen your pencil and take a look at those relationships and just make sure that the economics are working out the way they're supposed to. And then the last thing in the fourth quarter, I think it's important to look at, and you should be doing this all the time, of course, but the fourth quarter is a good time to do it because you are, again, taking that sort of forward-looking approach. And this is something we've been taking a hard look at lately at Plow as well, is are there gaps in your team's skill sets and capabilities, right? And if there are, what is your plan to deal with it, right? And there's a couple different answers that could come from that. There could be nothing. They're gaps, but they're not meaningful enough for us to go spend money on new people. Could be we have gaps and our plan is to grow some of our internal team to fill those gaps over the next 6-12 months. The last one could be we need to get some new folks, and this is the areas that we need to grow, that we need help with. And so what are we doing? What's the recruiting plan to get there in the next 60, 90, 120 days? All right, so those are really the options, but the fourth quarter to me is a perfect time to take a look at that, especially since while retail, the fourth quarter in retail is really busy. We all know that in a lot of traditional kinds of industries, from Thanksgiving to Christmas, things get pretty quiet, right? Things tend to slow down, right? It's a good time to maybe take a step back and be able to do some more strategic thinking. And so, doing this kind of combination of tech assessment and budget work, vendor reviews, and, gap analysis around your teams, I think stands all of us in good stead as we look to 24. So that's something we're putting a lot of stock into that at Plow. And I hope that that's something that would be helpful to you as you think about and head into to the fourth quarter and into 2024. Again, nothing I said there is groundbreaking or maybe isn't even obvious, but as it's what's on my mind today. It's what I'm dealing with as I move into October, and my role as Chief Operating Officer. And again, we're a small company, so the lessons don't necessarily line up everywhere, but it seems pretty close. And again, I've worked in a large organization before, so I know sort of what those dynamics look like. So it's really more of a scaled down version of the same problem, I guess is the way I would describe it. There's, again, obviously a lot of other things you could do to get ready for 2024, but these should hopefully put your company in a good spot tech-wise as you look to the next year. So I hope that helps. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, it's just me, so try to keep these shorter because the last thing you want is to hear me blather on for longer than probably 20 minutes or so. If you enjoyed today's episode, or if you didn't, please drop us a line at cuttheshit@plow.net and tell us why you did or didn't enjoy it. And if you have topic ideas or interview ideas, people you think we ought to be talking to, please share those with us as well at the same email address. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, take care, and we will be back in 2 weeks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would become a subscriber wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, that would really help us out. Or you can just go old school and tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, and hell, anybody else who you think might want to hear something like this to listen in. If you're on social media, make sure to follow us on TikTok at CutTheShitPod, all one word, where we post lots of clips from the podcast. And last but not least, you can also watch the YouTube version of the show on our YouTube channel at Plow Networks. Until next time, take care and have a great day.